Any plans for this evening? Perhaps a game night?
Game over, man. It's game over.
Shut up. Play the game. Play it from your heart.
26 years ago, we started playing a little game. Now, we're all gonna sit down. We're gonna finish it.
And may the odds be ever in your favor.
And here we go.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Dice Camera Action, a mashup podcast about board games and movies where cardboard meets a silver screen. Each episode we review a board game, and then if you're a cinephile, you can stick around for a discussion about a movie with a similar theme. I'm Matt Cousineau, and as a first-time guest host, we have the host of the Trick Talkers podcast, Ryan Campbell. Thanks for joining us. I'm excited to have you on.
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah, so recently I discovered your podcast, probably in the last 6 or 8 weeks. I don't know how I didn't come across it before that. Probably my own, not being that efficient in finding my content because it is right up my alley. I'm a big trick-taking game fan, and I was super, when you find something that you're like, oh man, I'm going to dive deep into this, I'm excited to find this, and I'm going to listen to as much as I can. That was Trick Talkers for me recently. So yeah, really enjoying your content there. If you're into trick-taking games, climbers and shedders, definitely check out Trick Talkers. It's a great podcast, and Ryan, I guess, is the main kind of host there for that podcast. Is there anything else you want to plug or talk about before we kind of move on from that, since we're on the subject?
No, the Trick Talkers podcast, we've been a little lackluster on episodes recently, just timing and how things go in life. You just get busy with other stuff. But there's definitely a big enough catalog that if you started listening now, you'll have plenty to fill your time for a while.
For sure, yeah. I'm probably 6 or 8 episodes into. I'm kind of cherry picking episodes right now, but I'm definitely gonna check out the rest as time goes on here.
I will give a warning. I just wanted giving a warning on some early episodes. Audio quality is pretty poor, so we're recording on computer laptops, and it's not until a little later where we actually get better microphones. So if you do listen to early episodes, just know it'll take a little bit getting through.
Yeah, that is the origin story of a lot of our podcasts.
Of course.
Mine included. Definitely as time went on over the last year. I've been doing this for a year now, this podcast. But at first probably half a dozen episodes, definitely upgraded the equipment and the camera and the mics and stuff like that. So I hear you. So before we get into our regular episode, just a few housekeeping items I want to get to. So if you haven't noticed already, my voice is a little bit hoarse, and so I've been really sick over the last week or so. Ryan and I were supposed to record this a little over a week ago, I guess, and I contacted Ryan. I said, can we record tomorrow night? I'm sick as a dog. And then the next day I felt worse somehow, and I'm still recovering. So if you hear me sniffling or clearing my throat, apologies. There'll probably be a little bit more of that than usual. So just bear with me. I'm struggling, but the show must go on. And that is also the reason for the late episode. I think there was supposed to be an episode last week. So we're into week 3 now as we're recording this. And usually we drop an episode every 2 weeks. So apologies to everybody. I'm sure all of my hundreds of millions of fans are waiting by their computers, just smashing the refresh button, waiting for the new episode to drop. Apologies to everybody who is waiting. But we're going to be back on track here. We're releasing an episode every 2 weeks. The other thing I wanted to talk about really quickly, I wanted to congratulate Geek Daddy 2014, otherwise known as Elijah Johnson, who was the winner of our Vantage giveaway. So Ryan, I don't know if you knew, but we were giving away a copy of Vantage by Stonemaier Games, courtesy of Board Game Bliss, our sponsor here on the podcast. So that should be well on its way. He may even have his copy by now. So congratulations, Elijah. Thanks for everybody who entered. It was a lot of fun to put that out there into the world and have a bunch of people join the contest. We did it's kind of funny, Ryan. We did a kind of a bit where, have you ever played the game I'm going camping and I'm bringing a whatever?
Some item with you, yeah.
Yeah, an item, and then you either wrong or right based on the rules that were established for that game, and only the runner of the game knows the rule until everybody tries to figure it out. Well, we had done that as the code word to get extra entries for the podcast, but people didn't know it unless they went and listened to our like little giveaway podcast. And it was funny to see some people copy other people's answers that were clearly wrong.
Just hope that it was a shot in the dark was right.
Exactly. But yeah, it was pretty fun to watch it all go down. But yeah, congratulations, Elijah. I hope you enjoy your copy of Vantage. So just to line up the episode, today we're going to do some shout outs. We're going to talk about some of the stuff that we've been watching and playing. We're going to be reviewing Origin Story. Speaking of Stonemaier games, the latest release of Stonemaier games is Origin Story, a trick-taking game, which is why I reached out to Ryan, who did his own little mini episode on that. So we'll get into that a little bit more. The movie that we paired with the game is Chronicle, and we'll get into that a little bit more as well. So excited for that. Before we get into all that, I have a trick-taking term question for you, Ryan. So
okay.
A few weeks ago, we met up at an Airbnb with a friend from the States. They live really close to the border of Michigan and Indiana, so Midwest folks. And so their whole family came and our whole family went, and we got together at an Airbnb and we played board games all weekend. And we have kids the same age, so they had a blast and they played, and it was a great time. But we were playing... I'm trying to remember what game we were playing. Anyways, we're playing a trick-taking game. No, it wasn't
People from Michigan.
euchre.
Probably be euchre.
Euchre's huge in Canada too.
Yeah.
But so we met north of the border in Kincardine, and we were playing a trick-taking game. And we in Canada, at least use the term cut. Have you ever heard the term cut be used in trick-taking games?
Cutting the deck?
No.
Okay,
so obviously not.
Maybe not.
Specifically in reference to trick-taking and Trump. It doesn't ring a bell?
Is that like roughing, where if you can't follow suit, you then play the trump suit to win the trick?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Not necessarily winning the trick, because somebody behind you could also
play higher. And
over, play higher. Yeah.
I usually refer to it as roughing. That's how I...
Roughing. Okay, interesting. That's a term that I've never heard before.
Well, there you go.
So is that a common term in trick taking?
Yeah, there's like sloughing. You slough off suit when you want to lose the trick.
That one I've heard.
Yeah, so roughing is when you want to win the trick. I don't actually know the history and the etymology behind it. Just that's the one that I typically use. That's also the one that the Japanese trick-taking games use, which is like a big component of the importing games, and you're trying to translate those games. They like to use the word rough.
Yeah. That's a great word for it, because a lot of those translations are really rough.
They are. But yeah, I don't think I've ever heard it or remembered it being called cut. It's possible in some reading of like traditional games, they've used that term, because that's probably, the history along the line of where it's come up from. So that's what you guys use a lot in Canada?
Well, at least in the area I'm in Canada.
Sure.
Canada's obviously a huge country. But
sure.
Yeah, in at least in Northern Ontario for sure, and in like French Canadian Northern Ontario, we use the term cut. When you play a trump off suit to win the trick, or to attempt to win the trick, you are cutting. So we had used that term, and our friend Shelly was like, what word are you saying there? Like, why are you saying that? And then my wife and I were like, what are you talking about? It was a very confusing moment, but it was really interesting to and I said, like, what word do you use? And she's like, she didn't have a word. There was no word. She's like,
just playing trump off.
play trump off suit to win the trick. I'm like, that's a lot of words, Shelly. Got to be more efficient. Anyways, I just thought that was an interesting conversation. I've been asking a lot of people in the trick-taking world and realm that question. And not super common for people to know about it, and mostly it sounds like it's more a very regional thing up here in Canada. So anyways, just wanted to throw that out there and see what your thoughts were.
Learn something new every day, right? I learned cut, you learned rough. It's perfect.
I learned rough, yeah. Which one do you prefer?
I don't know. I mean, rough seems a little sillier, I always feel like, but it rhymes so well with slough. And there's
Slough
always
and
the
rough,
fun.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And there's actually like a specific like way to play games that you call slough and rough. Especially in a partnership game, like in bridge or something, where like there's really tactical decisions where your partner can trump in on it, and then you could slough when you need to based on the number of tricks you're trying to go for, if it's like spades or something. So being able to say slough and rough is a little bit funnier and cooler than slough and cut, maybe.
Yeah, sure. I think we use the word throw off.
Yeah.
So you throw off
I've heard that too. Yeah.
kind of thing to if you're trying to lose the trick, which we did a lot of because played a ton of euchre up here in high school with some friends and family and stuff like that. So
throw and cut sounds like you're fighting, but
yeah, that's true. Rough and cut, yeah, or slough and cut, yeah. All right, let's move on to the episode here.
And stop shouting! I'm not deaf!
With let's talk about some shout outs. So some of the stuff that we've been playing lately, and we kind of had a funny little moment here because we both picked games from the same designer, from the same publisher that both recently delivered. Let's start with yours, Ryan. You recently played Hen House?
I did. So designed by, I believe, a friend of yours.
That's right, yeah.
Steven. Yeah, and it is published by Baron John Games. And it is a climbing shedding game. And if anybody has listened to the Trick Talkers podcast before, knows I generally prefer trick taking over climbing shedding games. So it takes a little bit more for me to really get invested into a climbing shedding game. And I've now played Hen House 3 times and have enjoyed my plays more and more as each play goes on.
Cool. So do you want to maybe give a really quick rundown of what makes it interesting or what makes it different and why people might want to check it out?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure we can probably skip over what a climbing shedding game is. I think listeners probably are aware of that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the biggest part in this game is there are 2 suits and 2 colors. So in normal games, you've got, your numbers 1 to 10 or 1 to 12 or whatever it is. And then you've probably got 4 suits or even no suits. In this one, there's chicken and eggs, and there are brown chickens and white chickens and brown eggs and white eggs. And when you're making combinations, you care about the type or the color. So I can make a run of 3 cards. I have a 2, 3, 4 in my hand. Well, in most climbing games, it doesn't matter. I play a 2, 3, 4. Sometimes it has to be suited. But in this game, the suits are specifically the types or colors. So cards can be multi-use depending on how you want to combine them. And I find that very fascinating on how you puzzle out your hand. If I have a brown egg and a brown chicken, those are both brown and I can play them together. But that brown egg could actually be used on a combination that uses all eggs. So cards have multi ways to make combinations on how you shed cards. Because the goal, like most climbing shedding games, is to shed out first. So you want to look at your hand and puzzle things. Okay, well, if I play it here, it'll do this, but then it'll leave this card dangling as a single. So what if I swap these melds around? And I just find that very fascinating.
Yeah, it's a cool game. I played with my sons, Charlie, who's 8, and Remy, who's 5. So it was a little bit rough, but especially with Remy, he's not quite there yet with playing games and especially games where there's like really hard decisions to make and you're looking at everything. I think he usually plays by like whatever he sees first that makes sense. He just plays it. There's not a ton of strategy there, which is fine. It's still fun and we had a good time. But then I played with my game group. I think we played 2 games actually a few nights ago. And really interesting. And I think you're right. It's the puzzling out your hand and looking at it and trying to figure out like, how do I want to work this out? And then, the tough thing is that you can also make a hen house, which is a specific kind of combination that we don't need to get into, but it's a specific special kind of combination that you can basically play anytime on, it one-ups whatever's on the table, unless it's another hen house, in which case you have to like increase, right? Because it's a climbing game. But yeah, like not being stuck at the end with like 1 or 2 cards that you just will never get rid of. And that's something that happened pretty frequently in our first couple of games, especially with the fact that you're like, oh, this is great and this is great right now, and you play these cards and you one up and you're shedding your hand, and then just the way it comes out, you're like, oh no, I have this weird combination of cards in my hand and there's nothing I can do with this. Yeah, and there's some neat like little other kind of side cards that you can make use of as well. The skunk and the snake critters. And the critters is what they're called. You can kind of manipulate the current meld that's on the table before you play onto it, which is interesting as well. So anyways, if you like climbers and shedders, this is a very unique one, an interesting one that I haven't seen anything specifically like this before. So definitely one worth checking out. And then my shout out is from the same publisher, Baron John Games. Came from the same Kickstarter, and the reason I backed it is because I'm good friends with Blurpy. And I think Steven, or I guess his nickname is Plurpy, for those who are wondering what the heck that means. But yeah, so I think Steven had been working on Three Tricky Pigs for a long time. And then my co-host on this podcast, Andrew Stiles, or one of our co-hosts, I think came on a little bit later in the game and helped out and did some other stuff. And he ended up doing enough, obviously, that he ended up being a co-designer on the game as well. So congratulations to both Steven and Andrew for publishing this game, Three Tricky Pigs, which is a really interesting. Have you played this one?
I have.
Yeah. So really interesting take on trick taking, where it's probably the most thematic trick taking game that I've played, and probably challenges in terms of like how thematic it is and how mechanically thematic it is. Probably challenges Origin Story, which was, one of like two of the most thematic trick taking games that I've ever played, that both have like, come to me in the last weeks, right? Anyway, so three Tricky Pigs, there's 4 suits, and they're set up in a really interesting way. There's a straw suit, a twig suit, a wolf suit, and a brick suit. So if you're thinking about the story of the 3 little pigs, you're building houses of straw, of wood, and of brick, and obviously there's the wolf as well. And the goal in the game is to get away with being the laziest pig unless the wolf shows up. So the way that works is, if you imagine the 3 pigs, they need to build a house. But obviously building a house out of straw, it's a light material. It's easy to put together. You can be lazy and put it together. Same with the twigs. But obviously building a brick house is going to be a lot harder. So basically what you want to do is the trick with the card with the lowest number is going to win the trick, unless there's a wolf in the trick, in which case it changes and the highest card wins. And the card layout is set up in a way that the twig and the straw cards only have 1 to 10, and then the brick cards have 21 to 30, and then the wolf cards have 11 to 20, and then they have 1 at each spectrum, at each end of the spectrum, a 0 and a 31. So in a lot of cases, the wolf is going to win, unless you've built a brick house that is stronger than the wolf. So essentially, you've got a hand of cards, and and it's a must follow trick taking game with no trump. So it's just really fun to like put down the 1 of straw, and then forcing everybody to play a straw card. They have to play the 3, the 4, the 5, whatever, the 10, and then they lose the trick. And then maybe you put down the 1 of twig, but the next person doesn't have a twig, so they play a wolf and they win the trick, So it's really interesting, and ends up with a lot of really funny scenarios. So it's fun in the kind of thematic nature of it, but it's also really neat because there's these bidding cards. At the beginning of each hand, you're going to look at your hand, and then you're going to choose secretly whether you're going to sleep, which means you want to win 0 tricks. And if you achieve that, you'll win 12 points. You'll play. Instead of sleep, you'll play. And in that case, you want to win exactly 2 tricks. If you succeed that, you'll get 7 points. Or you could work, in which case you want to win 3 or more tricks. If you do, you'll win 3 points. Or you'll eat. And in that case, you'll need to win the most tricks, more than anybody else, and no ties. In that case, you get 2 points for every trick you won. And on top of that, you always get 1 point for every trick you won on top of these points. So you have a secret bid, which is super fun. And it's just a game where, again, it's way more thematic than I ever thought a trick taking, it just surprised me in that way. The art is really, really charming. It has this like Warner Brothers kind of Looney Tunes style art to it. And it's just really charming and really fun. I played that a ton with my boys as well. And they were able to pick up on it and play fairly well. And we had a great time. I played this with my game group as well, and it was a huge hit. So I think this is one that's going to come back to the table fairly often. I think it's risen pretty close to the top of, probably my top 10 trick taking games at the moment. And I say that and I know for sure I don't play nearly as many trick taking games as you, especially, imports and all that stuff. So, take that with a grain of salt. What did you think of Three Tricky Pigs?
No, I mean, you hit a lot of points that makes it really good. It is certainly very thematic. One of the other cards that comes in the game are the Huff and Puff cards, which are addition cards. Basically, you play a pig or a wolf, and you can add a Huff or a Puff and a Puff to increase the value of your card, which is great. but it also adds a layer of how long or how short the round will be, because it's very similar to a game called Pups, which is one of my favorite trick-taking games. And everyone's dealt the same number of cards, but these huff and puffs can make the round go quicker when someone plays 3 cards into a single trick when somebody else is only playing 1. So you have to think about, okay, well, if I have them in my hand, I can manipulate how long the round's going to be, which will dictate my bid for the number of tricks I'm going for. And if you don't have any, it means the other players are going to have them, and you can't be as sure about when those will get played for what your bid is. So it adds an extra layer to your bidding on top of not only the lowest wins if there's only pigs, but high wins if a wolf comes in. So you're constantly trying to manage those on top of how long do I think the round's going to be. And I think that's a really fun way to add the hidden bids and, you know, that little bit of, I can play a wolf now, I'm going to win when you didn't expect me to win kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a moving target. The bid feels a bit of a moving target. And if memory serves, I think the rules say that a hand will last 6 to 10 tricks. So quite a bit of variability there from hand to hand, you know, between 6 and 10 tricks is a big difference. Cool. So that's 3 Tricky Pigs and Hen House by Baron John Games. Both highly recommended as far as I'm concerned. You got a movie you want to shout out?
Yeah, I figured since we're talking about superhero movies and origin story related things, Megamind is clearly the top on the list for me for this. This is the go-to movie for both my wife and I, my wife Michelle. We will, at the drop of a hat, watch this movie no matter the time or day. And it's great. If you've never seen it, I would more than highly recommend watching it. I'm not even going to spoil anything about it. You just got to experience it on your own. But it is a cartoon animated movie. Will Ferrell plays the main Megamind character. Tina Fey is the main sidekick, if you will, and then, or the love interest, even more so on that, because actually Minion is the sidekick, which is David, why am I blanking on his last name? There's dozens of us from Arrested Development. But why am I blanking on his last name? David Cross. There we go.
David Cross, right.
Brad Pitt. So it's a solid lineup. I think it is a movie that needs to be talked about more, seen more. It's a lovely time. Go and watch it. I could talk about it more if we want to. I'm prepared to talk a while about it, but I know this is just a shout out. So I'll leave it at that and just leave the excitement at a go watch it.
Yeah, like I saw it when it first came out. I don't even know when, Megamind, 2010, so 15 years ago, I saw it, maybe in theaters, but nice. I remember really liking it and thinking it was hilarious, and I had a great time with it. Have not revisited it or seen it since, so probably should do that. In fact, I think I will, because, you know, again, that's a movie that came out before my kids were born, so always fun to revisit. You know, my kids' movies from, you know, either my childhood or whatever before they were born. It's always fun to rewatch those. In fact, we watched Fantastic Mr. Fox tonight before their bedtime, which was a good time. One of my favorites. Cool. So the movie that I wanted to shout out is a movie called Deadstream. It is a movie that came out, let's see.
It was when
you got it. Yeah, 2022. Yeah. So it's a found footage movie, found footage horror movie. And those are a dime a dozen. And it's funny, I didn't even make the connection till just now, but the movie we're going to be reviewing today is also a found footage movie. Not a horror movie, but so Deadstream is a found footage horror movie where a live streamer who was basically canceled and had all kinds of legal issues is making his big comeback, and he's trying to make a big splash. He's finally been uncanceled or unbanned from whatever platforms, and he wants to kind of regain his audience. And he was known for doing dangerous stunts, and in the process either severely injured or killed or somebody, and that's the reason he had legal issues and whatever. Anyways, his big comeback, and what he does is he sets up this camera rig on himself where he has a camera pointing outwards from his head, but also kind of this arm thing where he has a camera pointing back to his face as he's moving around and doing his thing. And the kind of setup that he's a live streamer and wants to shoot everything is kind of a unique and interesting setup, because a lot of the times, especially if you're watching as a film fan and as a cinephile, found footage movies often have shots and situations and scenes where you're like, there's no reason anybody be shooting this. There's no reason that this would be on film, and it kind of takes you out of it a little bit because it doesn't feel realistic. Well, the conceit of this movie is that he's shooting everything because he's a live streamer, and he wants to catch everything. And so basically the idea is that he's going into this like famously haunted house and he's going to go spend the night. Yeah. It's also, like I failed to mention, it's a horror comedy. More on the horror, a little bit on the comedy, but it's sort of like a satire / dark comedy. And a lot of the stuff that he does is like just really funny if you think about it for a second. But it really plays like a horror movie, and it's really well done, and I had a really good time. Like, just to give you a little bit of an example, like he goes around the house setting up cameras. The first thing he does, oh, this is the room where so and so died, and they hung themselves in this corner, and blah blah blah. I'm gonna set up a camera. So he takes a camera and he duct tapes it to the wall, and then you see him grab his iPad and he adds the camera to the stream, and then he names the camera. And every time he goes into a new room, he calls it like a master bedroom camera. And then whatever, this camera and that camera, hallway camera. And then he, at one point, is stuck in a situation where he needs to see around a corner. And all he has is a like a pepperette stick. Like a literal meat stick. So he duct tapes a camera to it and then adds it to his live stream and calls it like the beef cam or something like that. And like those are the types of things that are like subtle and small, but just like crack you up. And anyways, it's super fun, and I had a really good time with it. And it's a movie that I'll say I was never taking out of it at any point because of like silly, like, why are they shooting this, or why do they have this angle or whatever. It's just like one of the best made and set up found footage horror movies that you'll ever see. So definitely recommend Deadstream. I gave it 3.5 stars. I had a really good time with it. It's not like, it's not the next Godfather, but it's a really fun time if you're into the horror genre and you want to see a really well-made found footage horror movie. All right, so that wraps up our shout-outs for the. I want to take a quick moment to shout out our sponsor, BoardGameBliss.com, which is honestly where I've been buying games for years. This isn't some random ad read. They're literally the only people I reached out to because I already love what they do, and I was relieved when they said yes so I could be fully genuine when endorsing them. They've got a huge inventory of games and are always super competitive price-wise, which is important to me. At Board Game Bliss, we believe in the magic of play. Board games spark joy, forge connections, and create unbelievable moments. We source exceptional titles from around the globe, so your table always has something exciting to offer. Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned pro, there's always a new favorite waiting to be found. Go to BoardGameBliss.com and find out why they're my personal favorite place to buy board games. And I guess we'll get into the board game of the episode.
Let's do it.
All right, so the board game we're going to be reviewing today, I'm really excited to talk about it, is Origin Story, the new Stonemaier game that was published in 2025. It was designed by Jamie Stegmaier and Pete Wissinger, okay, thank you. And art by Clementine Compardoux, which is the same artist from the Wingspan. I guess she did all the Wingspan art, I believe. It plays 1 to 5 players. It plays in 45 minutes. It has a BGG weight of 2.15 and a BGG rating with under 300 ratings. This game's only hit the market a couple of weeks ago. Not a ton of people have played it. 7.6 so far, and something tells me it's going to end up higher than that once the Stonemaier fanboys get their hands on it and kind of flood BGG with their ratings. I think it'll get higher than that. So yeah, 7.6 so far. Do you want to take, Ryan, because I'm hoarse and I'm struggling here a little bit? Do you want to take a stab at kind of giving a description of how the game plays?
Sure. Sign me up.
Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, right. Test my podcast skills since I have one, right? We'll see how bad I am actually at it. Especially when I'm a guest. I'm like, oh, I got the easy job as the guest, but no, here we go. Okay.
Mixing you in a little bit more than usual, probably. Yeah.
Perfect. No worries. So Origin Story, as you alluded to, is a trick-taking game. It's played over 5 rounds, and each round, at least for the first 4 rounds, everyone's going to be dealt their hand of cards. It is from a standard deck of 1 to 13 and 4 suits. And from those cards, you are then going to be dealt 3 ability cards from what is known as the story deck. From those 3 cards, you'll pick one of them and then discard the other 2. And you're looking at these ability cards as you're looking at your actual playing card hands. So you have 8 cards that you'll play for tricks. And then you're looking at these abilities to try and help based on what you'll do in the round when you play those tricks. But everyone's doing this simultaneously. So they'll pick an ability. Once everyone's picked their ability, you flip it face up. And ideally, you go around the table and briefly tell everybody, hey, this is what my ability is going to do in case it messes with your abilities or things. And I'm sure we'll talk in detail about the abilities and stuff a little bit later here. But once you've done that, then everyone will charge those abilities. Each ability has a cost. It can range from a certain amount. And you all have stamina, these little pink tokens that you get. You start with one, and every round you get one at the beginning. When you draw those ability cards, you also take a stamina. So everyone goes around placing their tokens on them. There are some abilities that have to be done in turn order, but otherwise they're generally done simultaneously. Once that's done, everyone will then simultaneously choose their alignment. So because this is a superhero / supervillain game, you are choosing if you want to be a hero or a villain, which mechanically just equates to, do you want to win tricks or do you want to lose tricks? If you go hero, you want to win, villain, you want to lose. So you have a little... And I actually have a fun thing here because I brought the little components. One of the greatest components in this game is the little masks that show which side you're on. So you'll just take your little score tracker and then you put it on the table the side you are. And then after that, you do the trick play. It's pretty standard trick play. One of the suits is trump. It's must follow. If you can't, play whatever you want. In this case, you could rough or cut, as we said earlier. Highest of trump will win, or if there's no trump, highest of lead wins, unless there's some crazy abilities, again, that can change all of that. You play out the tricks, you score your points based on hero, villain, any ability cards, etc., and you rinse and repeat that throughout the rounds. Round 3 and round 5 have some special stuff along with them, but I think that's probably good enough for a general overview. Maybe an in-depth overview.
Totally works. Yeah, we'll get into it obviously a little bit deeper here as we go, but yeah, that works perfectly. And you're right, the component of the like score tracker is really, really cool. It works perfectly, and I was a little bit baffled as to how the numbers could work on both sides, especially when I was like, go ahead. I was just going to say that the fact that you can flip it over and it still works and the numbers still can go up and down, and then they show the same number on the other side. It's just a really well-made component, and yeah, it's neat, and it's like a hero mask and a villain mask, and it also, like, you know, tells you right on there. If you're a hero, it says gain 1 VP for every trick you won, and then if you're a villain, it just says gain 4 VP if you won 0 tricks. So there's just like, you know, and that's a typical Stonemaier thing. I think one thing they do for sure extremely well is components and player aids. And, you know, they set up the game in such a way that it's going to be as easy as humanly possible for you to figure out the rules and go along. And if you're not sure about something, a lot of the times right in the components, the answer that you need is there. And so that's no exception here with Origin Story.
Yeah, it's a good job with that.
So, I mean, I guess let's talk about, since we're talking about the components, I mean, we could talk about the art as well. I think it looks really, really sharp. The player mats are little comic books that all have their own little story. It's just really charming. The setup is really charming. And though it doesn't, like, if you think about it too long thematically, it doesn't always connect, you know, if you're watching the video here, Ryan's showing the comic book player mat. I'll post some pictures too, as I usually do if you're watching the stream or the video version of the podcast. But yeah, it's just like the components are great. The art is amazing. You know, it really, I love the art specifically on the ability cards. Is that what they're called, ability cards? I feel like I got that wrong. Story cards.
It's the story cards. I just interchangeably refer them as ability cards, but yeah, it's the story deck.
Yeah. And that's what they do. They grant you abilities. So
yeah.
I just love the art on these. They look great. And thematically, it's super fun to build your hero. And yeah, I just have a lot of fun kind of looking at my board as we play. So there's like a really mixed, you know, I listened to your Ryan Rambles episode of your podcast where you talked for, I don't know, 30 minutes or so alone on Origin Story. First of all, doing a podcast alone like that, I don't know how you do it. I feel like I would just like feel so rambly and so awkward.
That's why it's called Ryan Rambles, because it's my excuse as to why it's that way.
But you do a good enough job that it doesn't feel rambly. And it does feel somewhat cohesive, and
Awesome.
you do get your message across. Or at least I'll say that you did for your episode on Origin Story. I think that might be the only Ryan Rambles episode that I listened to. But
don't listen to any others. Just leave it at that one.
But I did a first impressions video of this. So if you've gone to the YouTube channel, you might have seen it. So I kind of released that, and then I listened to your Ryan Rambles 5-6 days later. And I was like, okay, our thoughts are very, very similar. So this might be the Agree podcast. So it might be shorter than a typical podcast, but hopefully we can have an interesting conversation nonetheless. So is there anything specific you want to kind of get into to start here?
Ooh, I mean, I think with your show, I'll let you take the lead. I'm just here for the ride. I'm down to talk about any of it at any time. So nothing in particular I want to jump right to. So I'm good for whatever.
Sure. I think there's three main things. Right? Three main, standard trick taking, must follow. There's a trump suit, 52 card deck. And then, the layer on top of that Jamie and, is it Pete have added here, I think are three main things, or I guess two main things. And then a little weird side thing that just shows up halfway through. But there's the hero cards that you get dealt, as you said, 2 at the beginning of the game, and then at the very beginning of round 5, instead of getting a new story card or ability card, as you call them, you'll flip over one of your 2 hero cards and activate it in turn order. And these have huge splashy effects, and some huger than others.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the things you quote unquote rambled about pretty extensively. So maybe we can start there. Or should we start with the story cards probably?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the story cards, I feel like we'll have more things to talk about, whether we agree or disagree. I think we could get a decent amount there just because there's enough variability with those. I think we're going to be agreeing on the superheroes all the way through. So
yeah. But so let's start with the story card. So basically at the beginning of every round, you're going to be dealt 3 of them, and then you're going to choose one, you're going to put it on your player mat, and then we'll all simultaneously charge them. And you won't be able to charge them all necessarily, but because you have a limited amount of stamina that you can use, but you're going to charge these cards. And these cards do all kinds of things. First of all, thematically, they have a name, and then they have a type. So there's super suits, talents, powers, backstories, gadgets, arch enemies, ultimate abilities, all kinds of different kind of types of abilities that you're going to get. And then they vary in cost, and then they vary in strength. But essentially, they are going to break the rules of the game. In some cases, they'll let you play off suit. In some cases, they will let you, or cut or play the trump suit, even though you could potentially follow suit. Some of these are one-time use abilities, or I should say one-time use per hand, whereas some of them are just ongoing abilities. And one thing I will say for sure is that they're designed really efficiently and in a really sharp way that I appreciate. So on the top corner, there's the amount of stamina you need to place on this card in order to use it. And then the thing that I appreciate the most, and then the thing I appreciate the most is that it tells you when you can use it, which I think is... and it does it kind of exactly. So if you take a look at the screen here, Ryan's showing you.
I feel like I'm a Wheel of Fortune on the
Vanna White. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there we go.
But so it's going to tell you whether it's ongoing or like this one, for example, it says multifaceted. It's a talent and it costs 2. And then it says when charged. So that's the when you can use it. So basically this is one that you'll use when you charge it. It says draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. So that helps you manipulate your hand, right? And then there's another one here called the burn. And it's a super suit. And then it says ongoing. So this is something that you can use all the time. When you charge it, you only need 1. And then it says 2 to the value of your strength card. So that's a type of suit, the red suit. And then the first played card breaks ties. So there's all kinds of ways you can break the rules and change things on the fly. And though you mentioned we kind of go around the table as you choose them and kind of tell everybody what our ability is. That is great in the first round, but especially depending on the player count. Once you get into the second and third rounds, there's no way to keep track of everybody's powers. You might be keeping track of specific powers that people have because they're so broken or so dangerous, and then you might want to start to kind of play around them. But generally speaking, these cards are a bit of a chaos bomb in the game, because from round to round, I mean, one of them, I don't remember what it's called or how much it costs, but one of them basically is at the beginning of the round. I think it's when you lead, you basically pay your stamina off of it. And then everybody has to play a random card from their hand. Like, these are the types of cards that like really kind of are just a chaos bomb. And for me, and this is probably the crux of my whole review of this game, is you got to just embrace the chaos and be okay with it and go in to have fun. Because if you are the type of person that is really hardcore into trick-taking games to the point where you're counting cards and you're keeping track of how many cards is left in each suit, and you're trying to be super strategic and win the exact right amount of tricks and all this stuff, and you like mathing it out, and you're just like want to be organized and on the ball and cross all your T's and dot all your I's as you're playing this like super intricate card game, this is probably not the game for you unless you can kind of let go of some of that and be okay with the chaos bomb. So my kind of like final thought on these cards, and then I'll let you kind of go off and ramble a little bit yourself, is that they're super fun and I have a blast with them. But it took me probably into my second game to kind of like tell myself and convince myself to be like, this is not your standard trick-taking game. This is not euchre. This is not hearts. It's not, a lot of these games where you're just trying to like be really strategic. You can, but you're going to get your heart broken. Oh. If you rely too much on I'll say this, I don't think the player who played the best will win in most cases.
Yeah.
And in some cases, yes, for sure. But in a lot of cases, it's not that way. And you have to be okay with that. And if you are, which in my third, fourth, fifth, and sixth games of this, I had a total blast. We're laughing around the table. We're making fun of each other. We're yelling at each other for using the ability at the absolute wrong time for me. And you just got to embrace the chaos. So I'll let you kind of talk a little bit about the story cards as well here. I'm sure you have thoughts.
Yeah. Sure. No, I mean, my thoughts are pretty much in line with yours as well. And I think you really, hit the nail on the head with, as long as you can embrace the chaos, you're fine, because you just need to go in and when you're picking your 3 ability cards, don't pick them for what strategically makes sense. Go for what feels good in your heart, what feels fun, what feels exciting, what's different. If this is the second or third or fourth time you're playing, I mean, you're clearly enjoying it, so you won't have that problem. But if we're convincing someone for first time, go for what seems the most fun. And that's the card you should pick. Because most of the time, your abilities or everything else or your tricks that you think you're going to win aren't going to go your way. As we've mentioned a couple times here, the deck is 52 cards, standard deck, 1 of 13 and 4 suits. Only 8 cards are dealt, so a lot is undealt. There is a draw deck, and the reason why they're undealt is because some of the abilities allow you to discard and draw. So there's another layer of manipulation, and card counting goes completely out the window. But you could be looking at your hand and going, oh, I've got the 13 in one of the suits. This is going to win. But somebody doesn't have that suit, and then they play the trump card, or they've got an ability that lets them do something else that lets them win. So you can't always guarantee any trick will ever win. So knowing all of that and just preparing yourself to go, okay, this ability seems fun. I want to do that one. I think you can have a really good time with it, and you can let the theme kind of take you along the way. You can even like role play it a little bit. I picked invisibility because I'm, this bird person, and it's not actually me going invisible. I'm just flying really high and no one can see me. Like, you can get really silly with it and get into the game that way. But like you said, Matt, if you are trying to play it like spades and be very exact and card count and hit your bid, then I think this is not going to be the game for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And a perfect example of that is a card that I want to highlight. It's called Huntress. It's an ally. It costs 2. Are you familiar with this card? Is it ringing a bell?
No, I'm trying to think about, there's so many of them. I know a handful of them pretty well, but Huntress is not ringing a bell.
So every trick you win is a point, unless you go villain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you could make every trick you won, or even like, half of each trick that you win worth 2 points, that's a huge swing. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Any ability card that gives you points is better than any ability card that doesn't give you points.
So we've had this card win, I want to say 4 out of the 6 games that we played. And so, yeah, it's called Huntress. It's an ally. It costs 2 to charge, so it's fairly expensive. But it is an ongoing ability where after you win a trick, if you played a heart, which is the trump suit, you can split the trick into 2 points for scoring into 2 tricks for winning purposes or scoring purposes. So basically, every trick you win with the trump suit gets you 2 points instead of 1. And in a game where there's lots of other abilities that let you draw and discard, and especially when you combine it with the hero cards, and this, I guess we could talk a little bit about the hero cards in a moment as well. But the hero cards are huge splashy effects that happen at the beginning of the very last round. And a lot of them, I want to say close to half, I'm saying that anecdotally without actually like counting them, but I want to say close to half or more potentially allow you to draw a lot of cards and discard a lot of cards. So there's been lots of scenarios where this card picked up early enough in the game really kind of stacks and gets you a lot of points. But then in that last round, because you're able to manipulate your hand so well, you're able to get a lot more hearts or trumps in your hand in that case. And I realize everybody's doing that, but it's just the combination of being able to manipulate your hand and stack it the way that most people can do in that last round, and being able to make a lot of your tricks worth 2 points instead of 1. So this is just one example of a combination of cards or a situation where you can just like get a lot of points. And I feel like most of the games that we've played, one person has won fairly handily, by 8 or 10 points. And then the rest of the group was sort of, in and around a similar amount of points. So yeah, that's just like one example. And I think you have to be okay with balance being optional is probably where I land with this game. But like, I was the player that had this card once, and I had a ton of fun with it, right? Despite people at the table kind of swearing at me and yelling at me. But I think all of that was part of the fun, right? Like, I was the big superhero, or in their eyes, the supervillain in that game. And so, a lot of people were trying to win tricks when it looked like I was going to win a trick, or like gang up on me if there were specific things that they could do to other players. So yeah, that's just one example of a card that I thought was like really strong and at the very high end of what these cards could do compared to some others that are just kind of like, I've definitely had scenarios where I've been given 3 of these cards at the beginning of a round, and I'm looking at them going like none of these really excite me. And then there's been other scenarios where I've got 3 and I'm like, I can't choose between these 3 because they're all broken. So again, chaos, you have to be okay with the chaos. And there's going to be scenarios where you get chaos bombed and it's going to feel bad, but just keep in mind that there's going to be scenarios where you're going to be the chaos bomber and you're going to have a lot of fun with it too. So that's sort of the abilities. I don't know if you had anything else to add to that kind of area of the game.
No, I think we hit all the points that I have made usually on it.
Cool. Do you want to take the lead then on the hero cards and your thoughts on that? Because I thought you summarized it extremely well in your episode, and maybe you can do a little bit of the same here for ours.
Sure. Let's see if I can remember what I said there. But yeah, so there are 10 superheroes, which that's the first thing. The story cards, there's 64 of them. There's more rounds, more of those go out, so there needs to be a larger deck. With the superheroes, there's only 10 of them. Each player gets dealt 2 of them. If you're playing a 5-player game, all 10 are being dealt. And there are some superheroes, just like in the story cards, there are some that are better than others. Well, there are some heroes that are definitely better than others. And so let's go over. I know you sort of, Matt, had mentioned how they work. In the 5th round, at the beginning of the round, instead of getting story cards and revealing a new one, you reveal a superhero. And we all go around the table, one person at a time reveals, and it has a when revealed ability. You resolve all of it, and the next person goes, they reveal, and they resolve their abilities, and everyone goes around until everyone's done that. And I think in my Ryan Rambles episode, the one that I really focused on, it's the one I always focus on whenever I'm talking about this game, is there's one superhero that will let you double your stamina and then gain 1 point per stamina that you have. So you just get a boatload of points for doing nothing. And it's just like, it's crazy. Which again, if you are okay to accept that, that's fine. There are a few other superheroes in there that also just give you points for doing nothing. But the one that I always like to use as the counter to it, to like really show you the extremes these go, is the bidding one. I think it's Himalaya, or no, it's Bear. It's Bear.
Bear.
You have to bid the number of tricks that you think you will win in the round. And if you succeed at it, you get 8 points. So one superhero, you just get usually 10 points because you have 5 stamina by that round. You double it to 10, you get 10 points. Don't have to do anything. You're just there, existing. But Bear, you have to think about it. You have to stare at your hand. You have to puzzle. You have to decide how many tricks you're going to win. And you still get less points than the other one who doubles their stamina and gets points for it. It's just crazy. I don't know if that was succinct enough as how I said it before, but that is like the huge thing I always hammer home, because that's what always sticks out to me on the superheroes, is those two things, which is a very extreme comparison of them. We can get more nitty gritty into it, but those just like, it always bothers me a little, because if you're playing this game, you've been spending 4 rounds, you're getting these story cards, you're like trickling your abilities, and you're getting some points. One round might be swingy, and then another round swingy for another player, and it's exciting. Everyone's being chaos bombs everywhere. And then all of a sudden, you just reveal this superhero, and you're like, boatload of points for me. And then someone else is looking at their superheroes like, what the heck? Both of them and I have to like do all this stuff. And it just,
and maybe
it feels weird when you get to, yeah, exactly. And like you get to there, and I don't want to say anticlimactic in that sense, but it can feel a little off when you reach that point of the game and you're supposed to be becoming this strong, big superhero, and you're like, oh, well, mine's clearly better than yours and I don't have to do anything for it. But anyways, I digress. I'll let you say some things on it.
No, I think you're right. Those are, for me, you know, I haven't read them all or ranked them or anything like that, but off the top of my head, those feel like the strongest and weakest ones. And then there's everything in between. But if you're the person with the Bear and it's paired with another kind of weaker one, and then you watch somebody just double their stamina, and not only like when you said the Bear, where you have to like make a bid, hit your bid, and get 8 points. The other person gets to double their stamina, gain 10 points minimum, and
didn't even go to the best part.
Yeah, they can double charge any of their abilities that are kind of a one-time use ability. So there's like some of the story cards or ability cards have a little like minus symbol on them. And basically it says like remove a stamina from this card to use this ability. And the one you're speaking of, which lets you double your stamina and gain points, also lets you double charge those cards and use them twice as much as you usually could. So not only does it just straight up get you 10 points, it also lets you use your abilities multiple times from your story cards. Whereas the Bear is just that. It's just hit your bid and gain points. There's not much else going on there. When revealed,
you get a little hand manipulation. You get to like draw more cards based on your bid and then discard down to 8.
There's some hand manipulation. You're right. Yeah. So there's also some hand manipulation.
Yeah.
But like in contrast, is just like wild. So yeah, and that's just again another example of balance and not having been, I think, a main concern of the designers. I think their main concern was like, how much fun can we inject into this game? And I think they've achieved that. It sounds like we're bagging on this game quite a bit. I have a lot of fun with this game. I have a very positive review. It's just like it needs to come with this caveat, and it needs to come with this like this precursor to be like, okay, you know, and I've had that conversation now with anybody who's playing this game new with me for the first time, especially if they're trick-taking fans. I'm going to say like, listen, just embrace the chaos and have some fun with it. Don't worry about like the strategy of trick-taking and trump and cutting and or sloughing or snuffing or what's the word? definitely not snuffing.
Close. Close enough.
Roughing and now I'm blanking on it. Sloughing. But anyways, there's a lot of fun to be had with this game, despite what I think is sort of a flaw, because you could still balance some of this stuff, right? Like I'm not sure if it was just like, was it rushed a bit, or did they just want that much variability? Like, I'm not sure what the thought process is going into that. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but for me, it feels like these could have been, you know, specifically the superhero ones, because they have such a huge impact on that last round. Yeah, it just seems like they could have, especially the fact there's only 10 of them. Like, it feels like those could have been balanced for sure. At least
Also,
with each
I
other.
mean, yeah, absolutely. And I'm pretty good friends with Pete. I've played a lot of his games. I've play tested a lot of his games. I even gave that as a little precursor at the beginning of the Ryan Rambles episode. So like any of my thoughts about it are slightly tainted because I know them so well. But even though it seems like I'm pretty harsh on the game in general, but I love Pete. He's a great guy. I know they've been working on this game for a couple years. Like, it has been in development and tested for a while. And I know Pete has mentioned many times over that this game is, I don't want to take like directly, I'm sort of paraphrasing. So Pete, if you're listening, I'm not trying to quote you directly, but it's more of that he knows that this game is trying to push the boundary of how much stuff can you put in the game to where like how crazy and wacky it can be. So having the heroes be the way they are, I don't think is as much of a concern that there are those drastic levels, because there's so much other drastic stuff going on prior to that in the other rounds. There's also an event in round 3, which we haven't talked about, which we can probably get to here shortly. But there are a lot of other things going on that it's like cool if I'm the person who is losing and I've got the Stygia, I believe is how it's pronounced, the one who just doubles the stamina and gets points. Like, that's great because now it's sort of a catch up for me. If it's the person who's winning, it's like, okay, well, now they're just winning even more. But it's okay because of that, chaos already being there so much. By the time you get to that, you're like, okay, it's fine. It's just another lever of chaos that this game, includes. So that's fine. I can continue to embrace it, and that's okay.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, let's move on to the event, the round 3 event. So in rounds 1 and 2, you are just getting your ability cards. You're getting 3 of them. You're choosing one. You're getting an extra stamina each round to work with. And then in round 3, before any of that happens, you get your 8 cards, and then we reveal one of these event cards. And I thought this was cool, but strange that it's just this like one-time of random event that will just kind of shake things up a little bit for that round. And sometimes barely shake things up at all. Because I do remember one where it's like, you get your hand, and then I revealed one of these, and it's just pass your hand to the left. So, okay, you have a little bit of information to the player next to you, what they have in their hand. But other than that, that's it. That's all it is for that round. And there's been other ones where you're like drafting the cards and passing the round, which has way more, I guess, impact on the round. But yeah, it's interesting that they just chose to like throw just a tiny little one-time chaos bomb in the middle of the game at the beginning of round 3. It's fun. Again, it's just another thing that they've added to the game that is a little bit strange, questionable, interesting, different, whatever word you want to use there. But at the end of the day, it's just fun. It's just a fun thing to pull out and do. In fact, like you mentioned on your episode, why not do one every round? And I'm thinking like next time I play, I might do that just to like add to the chaos of it and just add to the fun of it, because that's where the fun is in this game. I think that's the soul of this game, is just the chaos of it. Did you have any interesting or unique experiences with any of these cards?
Going over the drafting one, actually, I have a picture I can share to you, so it's better quality than me showing my phone if you want to share with the people to see. But basically, in the drafting one, I ended up getting a hand where it was all green cards and 1 red card. I just thought that was very funny in the moment of everyone's drafting cards. Nobody wanted the green suit. And at that point, I was already building up to be a villain. Like, all of my abilities, the way I was working, I just always wanted to win 0 tricks. So I was looking for crap cards the whole way around. So I'm like, well, there's a low green. And then the next hand came, there's another low green. Well, at this point, I'm just grabbing as many greens as possible. And every time, greens kept coming to me, except for the very last card, which was a red. So I've got 7 green cards and 1 red card. And it's a very funny moment when that happened. So I had a good time with that.
That's like a perfect kind of encapsulation of what this game is. It's just like a moment where something silly happens and we all just have a laugh. And, whether you're angry or happy or you think it's funny, it's just a good time. And I think, again, that's the crux of where this game lands for me. Yeah, these cards are interesting, and it's just like a little bit puzzling to me to be like, just this one event that only happens during the 3rd round. But hey, it's fun. It's interesting.
It creates a sort of nice middle part of the game too, if that like means anything for the scope of the game, like as you're playing. Because I know a lot of things that non-trick taking players, when they get introduced to trick taking games from someone that's aggressively into trick taking, they'll usually go, well, it's the same, we're just doing the same hand in hand, all we're doing is playing tricks and then shuffling and playing tricks. And this might just be that little bit, like that little carrot on the stick that's just like, oh, and now there's something different. You did 2 rounds in a row where it was the same, but then all of a sudden this third round, like as you're ready to be like, okay, it's just another round, it hits you with something crazy and you're like, oh, okay, I'm in it, what's this crazy thing? And then now you go to round 4 and you're like, oh, okay, well, it's back to what we did for round 1 and 2. And then round 5, you do your superhero. So I don't know if that's the like exact design reason behind it, but I could see that being a way to like make sure the rounds do say different. Obviously, ability cards are already making it different enough, but that one extra thing that spices it up halfway through the game, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit of a pacing thing, or like, okay, we're at the midway point now, and that kind of thing. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, cool. So any final thoughts on origin story?
No, I think we've pretty much hit all the things. I guess my prediction, if you will be that it's a Stonemaier game. It's got a big print run on its first print run. It's getting a lot of buzz. Like you said, it was already a 7.6 on BGG with under 300 ratings, and I'm also sure that will go up. I could easily see this game having expansions, even if it's just mini expansions to have more superheroes, have more story cards, more event cards. Like there's definitely the room for it to grow. And so like I know a main concern is there's only 10 superheroes, a 5-player game, they're all dealt. You have more superheroes, you can pick and choose your favorites. You can even start doing drafting stuff. Like, I mean, there's definitely ways to manipulate more of the things. And I could easily see this game, if it does well enough, having more content to really help potentially ease that, or just for people who don't mind it, have more content.
Yeah. If there's a whole bunch of more content and people love the chaos, they could just like embrace it all and put it all in there and just see what happens and have a good time with it. But I think that you could also go the other way with it. If there's more content, you could probably kind of sort of curate a game of origin story where you pick and choose, you maybe remove some of the specific cards that you feel are overpowered or underpowered. Or you could fix that with a draft, as you said as well. So yeah, there's lots you could, I agree. I think it's ripe for expansions, and I welcome it. And I think, again, I'll just say, as long as you're okay with a little bit of chaos and having some fun with it, I've been having a blast with this game, and it's been a hit with my group. And there's one person in my group who doesn't really like trick taking games that much. Every time we bring out a trick taker, and it's like, I love trick taking games, and so does most of the rest of our group. So we often end up playing them, and she's totally fine with it. She'll play. She just like feels like she's not great at them. She's fairly new to them, so it'll probably grow on her. But she loves origin story because of the chaos and because of the fun. And she says, like, I feel like I have a chance of winning this game anytime I play it, even though I'm not great at trick taking games. And I think that's great. I think it totally has a space in our hobby. And for me, this is, and I have not played a ton of Stonemaier games, but so far this is my favorite Stonemaier game. It's funny because I've said on the podcast before, I feel like Stonemaier is kind of the MCU of board games. They do a great job at putting out games that are great for a wide audience, crowd pleasers. But for me, I haven't gotten anything to the table personally that has completely blown my socks off. And so I'm sort of still waiting for that. This is the closest, a game's come to it. And, I've spent a lot of this episode sort of kind of criticizing the game and its chaos and its imbalances. I think, again, I was able to embrace it, and I go into a game of origin story looking for that chaos and wanting it. And for me, that's where the fun is just like, and it just creates these super fun interactions between the players, and like getting mad at each other, and like, swearing at each other, and like, making fun of each other and all this stuff. So I think that's where the fun is in this game.
Yeah. 100% agree with that.
Okay, so let's give our ratings and move on. So for me, I have this as an 8.5. It's a game that I'll throw to the table anytime. I love trick taking, and so there's a little bit of the trick taking elements where I'm like, this is fun, I'm trick taking, And then there's the chaos bomb and the fun of the building your superhero and all that. I have a lot of fun with it. And yeah, if you were asked me if it's one of my favorite trick-taking games, I probably wouldn't put it in that category because it doesn't feel like that much of a trick-taking game to me. Even though it's at the core of it, it's not where the fun is. The fun is not the trick-taking. The fun is the chaos, So that's kind of where I stand with Origin Story. How about you?
Yeah, I have it at, I guess, as a 6, but I do have it, I put in parentheses with a 7.5. I think because, I've played a lot of trick-taking games, so I'm probably a little harsher on it. So the 6 is more of a, I guess what I personally would give it, but I do try to think about the wider audience, showing it to people. If I am bringing it to a different game group, or if I'm trying to show things off, if I'm trying to show the breadth of what trick-taking can do, that is where my 0.5 comes in for that as well. What does that difference of 1.5 really mean? I don't know. Don't ask me. But as we've sort of repeatedly said over and over, the chaos is the biggest factor in this game. But like you had your friend who isn't really into trick-taking games really likes this. And that's what I think this game can be really helpful for, is people who are scared of trick-taking games. They don't want to play them because they know, oh, you're going to card count, you're going to destroy me, and it's going to be horrible. And this game can really help alleviate that problem. And for that, I think it is a very good game in the hobby to allow for people who are either really deep into trick-taking or new into trick-taking or anything in between can still have a good time if you are into that kind of thing.
For sure. Cool. All right. That was Origin Story by Stonemaier Games. Okay, let's move on to the movie of the episode. Chronicle, released in 2012, directed by Josh Trank. It stars Dane DeHaan, Michael B. Jordan, and Alex Russell. And the synopsis is as follows. In a world where teenage problems already felt cosmic, 3 high school friends stumble upon a glowing alien artifact buried deep beneath the earth. What should have been a cool discovery becomes something far bigger. A sudden, impossible surge of power, awakening telekinetic abilities that feel like unlocking a new #1 issue of their lives. At first, the powers are fun, a secret superpower in training montage of pranks, flight experiments, and youthful invisibility. But one of them, Andrew, played by Dane DeHaan, carries a lifetime of being a powerless victim. At home, he's abused. At school, he's bullied, and just in general, in life. And as his strength grows, the line between hero and villain warps. He stops being a victim and starts becoming something much darker. So this Chronicle, you hadn't seen Chronicle before, is that right?
Correct. The very first time I saw it was a week and 3 days ago now in preparation for this episode.
For when we should have originally recorded. Yes, exactly. Yeah, so do you want to start with your kind of general overall thoughts on the movie?
Sure. I will say right now, as an upfront, I am not as much of a eloquent speaker when it comes to reviewing movies as I might be about board games. So I'm sure I might stumble through this part a little bit more, so I'll definitely be leaning on you here. I'm obviously an avid moviegoer like anyone else would be. I enjoy my movies, but I don't know if I'd classify myself as a movie critic to be able to get like those really specific points here, but I'll try my best. But yeah, overall thoughts on the movie. I'll first hit the first part of it in that it is a found footage movie. I generally do not like found footage movies. So those are a little bit lower on the like, I would want to watch this movie versus not. And I found this one not to be too bad. I know you actually in Deadstream, you mentioned some of the ways you can get out of it is when there's no reason. Why is this being filmed right now? It just seems really, really weird. How did they find this footage? It gets you out of the movie because you're thinking about it too much. Well, in Chronicle, they also gave a reason too of he is trying to film everything. He's got this camera and he wants to film his life. And there's a couple, like almost the first 15 minutes of the movie, which actually did bug me a little bit. They almost over-explained why he had this camera. I'm like, okay, we get it. Move past it. We know he's got a camera. Come on now.
You need one line. Let's move on. Yeah.
Exactly. Just tell me once and we can be okay with it. So I was able to at least get on board with the found footage part. There was also, and I can't remember her name, but the main girl that was sort of the love story of Alex Russell's character. She was also filming things. So
yeah, she's like the school journalist or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, which I also found a little weird and a little distracting because it's like I'm supposed to be focusing on Dane's character, Andrew, and like because he clearly seems like the main character, but now we're getting her filming things. It's like, okay, who am I supposed to be watching from? And It just was a little weird. But that was, again, only like the first 15 minutes. Then they kind of moved past it once they found the glowing orb and then moved into the superhero bit. So yeah, I think overall, I found the movie enjoyable, knowing that it was from 2012, which is a little bit before the main like Marvel Cinematic Universe, and we're getting a superhero movie every single freaking year, or not even every 6 months, really. We're getting a lot of them. This one did something different, which is cool. It took a different approach. It's definitely darker than most superhero movies you see. So the story and the plot line that it follows is definitely more along the lines of a thriller than your standard superhero bright, shiny, happy ending that you always get.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. We talked about the found footage thing, and when a movie does takes a very stylistic choice, right? Whether it's found footage or a movie that does like everything in first person, like the Nickel Boys did recently. I don't know if you saw that one, or like Wreck-It or Hardcore Henry is the one I'm thinking of, where it was all first person, or a movie that's presented as all one take, like 1917. Or who was the one that won the Oscar not too long ago? That was sort of presented. Birdman. Was it Birdman? Is that what it was called? The one with Michael Keaton and. Anyways.
Yes, I think so.
When a movie does a very stylistic thing, and like for me, there's like why. The question is why. What does it serve in the narrative? What does it serve on screen? And if it doesn't serve something very specific, then my question is why? Like, why do it that way? You're kind of putting yourself in a position that's going to be more challenging. Especially in a lot of cases with found footage, mentioned this before, takes you out of it sometimes when you're like, there's no reason to shoot this. Like, why are they shooting this? Why is this there? It makes no sense. 1917 is a great example. Did you see 1917?
I did. I really liked it. It was good.
Yeah, it was like my favorite movie of that year. I loved it, and I saw it in theaters. And so 1917 is a World War I movie where one character is trying to make their way from point A to point B for a very specific tactical, super important reason. They needed to get there. And we basically follow this one character's journey. And what the kind of one-shot movie accomplishes there is a couple of things. One, when the tension doesn't get cut. When it's a one-shot thing, you can't cut away to a different scene or cut away to something else, and there's just no relief of tension. The other thing it does is that the tension is increased because you feel subconsciously like you're there, right? Because there's no cutting. It's a subconscious thing. It's probably not something you think about, but it just feels like you're more in it, right? So for 1917, it's a movie where I feel like the gimmick, if you want to call it that, serves the plot. It serves what the movie is trying to accomplish. And in Chronicle, I don't feel like the found footage thing serves anything. Like, I don't understand why they made that choice. That being said, I think they mostly achieved it. There's a couple of moments where I was like, why is this there? There's no reason to be shooting this. Like, he wouldn't be shooting this. Like, the camera wouldn't be rolling in this situation. Like, why, right? And so there was a handful of situations where I felt that way, but otherwise I think it's fine. Like they didn't blow it. It wasn't awful. It just didn't feel like it necessarily served anything beyond being a gimmick. It just served itself in terms of the gimmick or whatnot. All that being said, if we're gonna jump into like what actually happens in the movie. Basically, these 3 high school aged kids in the kind of the woods behind this like bush party, basically. It's like an abandoned warehouse party, but basically they end up behind it in the woods and they find this hole in the ground. And because they're high school boys and they're silly, they just jump in and they go check it out, and they're drunk and they're laughing. And it's like, oh, what is this? And they end up finding this like glowing orb thing, and then basically we like flash forward to like the next day, and they're basically have gained powers, and they're not great at using them yet, but they're able to like move things with their mind. And it's funny because they get the nosebleed thing that is kind of like a trope now, especially like if you've been listening to the podcast, I've been rewatching Stranger Things. And so, like, you know, Elle in Stranger Things always gets nosebleeds anytime she uses her powers. It's just funny to see that trope, but it's fine. It's just another tropey thing that they put in there. But yeah, they end up with these powers and they get better and better at using them. And I want to say, like, once they gain their powers, I agree. The first, like, 15, 20 minutes, whatever is establishing stuff they do is kind of a little bit awkward and stilted, and it's fine. But once they gain their powers, there's probably like a half hour, 45-minute period in the movie where I am just having so much fun. Because you have these, like, you imagine, like, most of the movies, most of the time when you get a superhero origin story, first of all, the person is solo. They don't typically have friends. You know, if you imagine Peter Parker or like whatever, they're like trying to keep their powers secret and they're trying to figure out how to use them. And the montages and all that stuff's always fun, but they don't have other people to bounce it off of and play with, which I thought was a really fun dynamic in this movie. The second thing is that these are high schoolers. And so they're doing high schooly things with their powers, which I 100% appreciated and had so much fun with, right? Like, they're blowing up girls' skirts and they're going to the mall and moving people's cars. And they're like going to the store, like a department store, and like scaring little kids by moving like teddy bears and pushing carts around. And just, they're basically just having stunts. And that is exactly what you would expect from high school kids. And I had just a ton of fun with this section of the movie. Do you agree with that? Were you having a fun at that point? Because for me, that was like the most fun of the movie.
Yeah, the discovery period of origin stories, that's the whole point. It's that you're following them as they're discovering it and seeing how they do it. Most of the time it's like, oh, I'm a superhero now and I can tell I've got abilities, and they're always trying to, like you said, keep it secret. So they're generally not doing as much activity with it. And this one, they definitely took that montage to an extreme of doing a grab bag of very silly boy things that they would do. I think my only critique that I had to that, though, is that I do actually wish they had spent more time at the very beginning immediately discovering their powers. Because you basically go from, they found that alien crystal, the camera goes out, and then it comes back and they're throwing the baseball in the backyard. And at that point, they're already trying to manipulate the ball because they know they've got telekinetic powers. I would, even if it was just like a minute or 2 minutes, like, this guy's filming everything. So, and he even like makes the first 15 minutes known, I'm filming everything about my life now. That's all I'm doing. So we should have seen the moment he first discovered he had powers, because I think, to me, that would have been the most interesting thing of being like, dude, can you see like this thing happen? And I thought that moment could have been a fun sharing moment, because that's what they do through the whole movie. All three of them are, oh, we can build this and we can move that and do all these weird pranks. I would have just loved that first moment of like, who discovered the power first? Who told the other person that also then tried? I just wish that was
it feels
there.
like there's a couple of days missing there almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But otherwise, that part of the movie was definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah. That, for me, that was like the most fun I had during the whole movie. And that like is worth, like, it's worth the price of admission, you know, just that like 40-minute period of them just like having fun with their powers. Because a lot of times you don't get that. You don't see that in most superhero origin story movies, right? You see them discovering their powers and figuring it out, and that is often fun. You know, you see Peter Parker trying to figure out how to web sling and he ends up falling off buildings because he's not good at it yet. And like, all that stuff's fun. But like, you don't typically see like a group of people discovering their powers, especially the fact that they're teenagers and they're doing teenagery things with it. I was just like cackling and having so much fun with that section. And then obviously things get a little bit more serious as, you know, life happens to them, especially with Dane DeHaan, or Andrew's character. His life is just garbage, right? Like, his dad's an alcoholic, his mom is sick, his dad is abusive, verbally and physically, and obviously Andrew's kind of a little bit of a broken person and doesn't really, I guess, because he's not kind of balanced in his own life and in his own head, there ends up being moments where it's like, maybe you shouldn't have done that. Right. And then the first big one is that they're driving down the road and this like crazy guy ends up tailgating them and like being like this like crazy driver. And I guess in a moment, without thinking, he kind of just swipes his hand and pushes the guy off the road, Well, the truck goes flying over the guardrail, down this like cliff into a pond or a lake or something. And it ends up being like, whoa, like, what did you do? Like, this is like crazy. Like you can't do that, And then so obviously that's kind of when things start to get real and you start to see Andrew and his kind of instabilities, and then what can happen when you give somebody that is a little bit broken the ability to give them power in any way, in any shape, right? So that's probably for me what this movie is about in general. If I had to pick out one thing, is like, if it's kind of a nice juxtaposition for me between these three guys and what their priorities are and what their home lives are like and what their school lives are like, especially for teenagers, because being a teenager is so volatile and so emotional and so hormonal in the first place that, like, if you give somebody the ability, like the ultimate ability to do whatever they want, what's going to happen? Where are they going to take that power? What are they going to do with it? Right. And at first, it's good, but when things get bad, obviously his mom ends up dying. His dad blames him, and the dad's abusive and everything like that. And so he basically ends up taking this turn where he just decides that he's going to be this apex predator. And one of the questions I had for you here, and I'm a little bit on the fence about it. How did you feel about that turn of Andrew going from like this fun-loving kid, because everything was sort of going okay in his life? And granted, things go bad. Like the one person, like one of the only people in his life that actually like showed him love and support and whatever, dies. And all he's left with is his dad, who abuses him and is an alcoholic. And the dad blames him for the death of the mother. Mm-hmm. So granted, he feels like there's some reasoning there, but how much did you buy that transition from him going to like, I just want to be an apex predator and like go nuts?
Yeah, it's tough because you could really see it coming miles away even before that. I watched this movie with my wife. She does Krav Maga, and she, about 4 days before that, had
she does what?
Krav Maga, the Israeli martial arts defense fighting.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, I think it was like 3 or 4 days before we watched the movie, she was in an active shooter training seminar. And so they were teaching like all these things about signs to look out for and going through different scenarios. And there was videos you'd watch, and it ranged from school shootings to public shootings and whatever else it would be. And so when we first watched this movie, very quickly she tuned in to like what Andrew's character was and what was going to happen with him. And she was like, oh, he's definitely the bad guy. And because you could just tell all the signs were there, especially if you are clearly looking for them, having just done that so recently.
Sure,
so
yeah.
She had thrown that out there, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see that too. But he's just a high school boy. He's having fun with his friends. But then you could see like when his dad would be abusive to him, or kids in school would they'd bully him or knock his camera out. You could be like, okay, yeah, I can see where as soon as he gets these abilities, he's not going to use them for good. So like, yes, his mom dying was certainly a like the final straw that broke the camel's back. Mm-hmm. I think anything could have done that though. Even if his mom was still alive, it could have just been one more time his dad hitting him upside the head, or someone else at school doing one thing that just could have finally broke him. So I don't necessarily think that was like the main pivotal moment that like that's what changed everything. That would have happened no matter what, I think. I don't know if that answers the question directly of what you're asking.
Yeah, so I guess the question is like, do you buy it? Is that something that like, do you buy that character turn? And I do, for like, I'll sort of answer my own question a little bit here. And I do buy the fact that, I guess the other factor is that he also quote unquote accidentally killed his buddy, right? Like Michael G. the character also dies sort of at his hands, right? I don't exactly remember the scenario, but I guess there was a lightning storm or something.
Lightning storm.
Yeah, and then like Andrew had a little bit of an altercation where they were like having a verbal thing, but they were way up in the sky near the storm. And I guess it's left a little bit vague because they kind of cut it, like something happens
to black
while they're arguing, and it kind of cuts away and it just kind of goes to black, and we don't really know what happened, but we sort of can insinuate that like Andrew lost his temper and maybe caused something to happen. and Michael B. Jordan kind of fell to his death. But yeah, I guess between that and the mother, I can sort of buy it. And I do buy the fact that he would kind of go dark. I just don't know if I buy how dark he went, to the point where he was just like, I'm gonna just kill pretty much everybody, and I'm gonna be this like unstoppable force. Like, what's the end goal there? Is he just having a temper tantrum? So those are kind of the questions that I'm just like not 100% sure about in terms of like the character growth there for him.
Yeah. So I guess then, using that context, I guess I would say that I do buy it, because, as we mentioned, he is a high school boy. So there are hormones. There's not fully thought, the process isn't being fully thought out, and it's anger and rage taking over. And he's not giving himself to try to fully think what he's about to do, and he just gets angry and does it. And especially with his, home being so abusive, that's what has been happening to him his whole time. So he doesn't really ever have anybody to process those thoughts with. So I am not surprised how evil he went. Like I said, my wife had actually called it how evil he was going to be pretty early on. So I was also anticipating it. But yeah, I think the part too where he is watching a spider crawl, I think like in his attic or in his house somewhere, and then he picks it up.
That moment was really cool.
Yeah, and it's very intense, because you're like, oh, maybe he's just going to play with the spider and he's just going to put it back down, and then he just rips the spider apart. And you're like, oh, okay, you're full evil now.
Yeah, that was the moment where we're like, okay, here we go. Yeah, and he has this one scene where he's sitting like cross-legged in a junkyard of some kind, and there's a car behind him, and he's kind of monologuing. I think it's internal. I think it's just like a voiceover, if I'm not mistaken. But he's basically monologuing about what an apex predator is, and basically decides at that moment that he's going to be this apex predator and nobody will be able to touch him. And then he kind of like, the car behind him kind of just crushes into a ball, and he's not even looking at it. So it's kind of this like a little bit cheesy, but at the same time kind of cool moment where you see how strong he's getting. The other cool moment, and I think that the movie for me is full of really cool moments. And for me, that's what takes this movie from being kind of this like cheesy, poorly, like the choice of doing the found footage thing is not the greatest. And some of the story beats, and I found the dialogue to be a little bit stilted when they're especially when they're talking with other people. Like the three boys together, I thought were great.
Yeah.
But anytime that other people were introduced to the group, for some reason, I don't know if the chemistry wasn't there, whatever, and the dialogue always felt a little bit stilted. It didn't feel like these are teenagers talking. It just didn't feel quite right. So there's all these like criticisms. But what took the movie and kind of like overshadowed those things that maybe I didn't like as much was so many really, really cool and well executed moments. And another moment I'll shout out, and it's similar to the spider one, and it's just really cool. The spider's kind of walking along, and you see him just open his hand, and that's all he does is open his hand. And the spider, like, it's not that it explodes or like gets torn apart. You very clearly see each limb being taken apart, taken off of the body. And it ends up being 9 pieces, the torso and the 8 legs just floating there. And it was all done in one very quick, very precise movement of his hand. And I thought, like, that's freaking cool. And then he has another similar moment with a bully in his high school where it's pretty gruesome too. Where he basically, like, I don't specifically remember the hand movement or what he did, but basically
pretty sure he puts his palm face up and then like pulls to grab him out, I think.
Yeah, and he basically like pulls a handful of teeth out of this kid's mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And then like it hard cuts to him in a bathroom stall talking to the camera and explaining how he did it. And this moment I thought was like such a great character beat where he's like starting to understand his powers a lot more and getting way more precise with it. And being so nonchalant about what he just did, like the gruesome, disgusting, vile thing that he just did. And he's so nonchalant about it. He's just like talking to the camera and showing the teeth. And he's like, I just pictured like little strings or lassos around the teeth. And then I pictured pulling those lassos And then he shows the teeth and he's like, see, this one, I got this one full. And then, but this one here broke. So I didn't obviously grasp that one well enough. And like, I just thought that moment was like so poignant and so like disgustingly, I don't know. I was disgusted by it, but at the same time, I'm smiling going like, what a great character beat for a villain. You know, there's lots of those moments. Anything else you want to shout out in the movie that you liked or didn't like? Or
yeah, I think that as far as, you know, we are really going to hammer on Andrew since he's the main character here, but the other two boys along with it, you know, they had their moments and their reasons and their character arcs, and like the part of them being there helped round out the group. And obviously Andrew becomes the most powerful one of them, of the three of them, but each of them is discovering their own abilities. And it's Matt, right? Is the other
cousin
friend,
yeah.
The cousin, yeah. So he's trying to like set rules after Andrew throws the guy into the pond. Like, look, we can't be just doing this kind of crazy stuff. We're going to be killing people. We have to have rules. We have to start instituting these things. And Andrew, as always, is going to fight off on that and get angry. But then Michael B. Jordan's just kind of in the background, just, hey, whatever, I'm cool. I'm
just
nonchalant.
having fun, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just here vibing. Oh, look, I'm going to start flying. Look, I can fly. And being the cool, like, jock guy. Well, each character helps round out each other, which also, I think, highlights Andrew even more, because you can see everybody got the same ability. And that's the one thing, too, I did like about this movie, is it wasn't like Fantastic Four, where everyone got hit with the same ray, but now they all have different abilities. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think it was really cool that all three of them got the exact same abilities, because then it showed you the exact difference of what one person will do with the same set of abilities just based on the type of person they are. Michael B. Jordan was just using it just to have a good time. Matt was trying to use it to also have a good time, but sort of to be a good Samaritan about it. Of course, after the montage of being a silly high school boy and messing with stuff. But like when stuff got real and they, you know, threw someone in the river, Matt realized like, no, we need to be smarter about this. The whole
need to be
great power. Yeah, great power comes great responsibility and all that. And then Andrew was just like, no, I'm strong. I'm going to use these powers, and just completely ignored all of that and just did his own thing, because that's how he's been growing up and being abused and bullied. Those are the types of people that are going to use those abilities in the way that he did.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head. And I think that is where pretty much all of the good stuff from this movie comes from, is those three. Mm-hmm. And those three specifically, when they're together, I think really they had great chemistry. And that's when the movie really sings. And then when you start to introduce a lot of outside stuff, it doesn't work quite as well for me. But generally, we spend like 80% of the movie with just those three anyways. So generally the movie, you know, holds together pretty well for me. And then I guess what ends up happening is that Andrew has a full breakdown, temper tantrum, goes full villain, and basically goes like full Magneto, and, you know, is flying around the city, basically like murdering people and running away from Matt, who's trying to like stop him and help him and get him to come back down to earth and realize what's going on. But ultimately, like once you get to, you know, you try to put yourself in Andrew's mind at that point, you know, he's mad at his dad. He throws him out the window or whatever. And then I think Matt saves him. But then, like, you know, that's the point where he like ends up killing people, multiple people. And then once you kind of cross that line, like you turn yourself in, you stop, like what's going to happen next? Your life is over, you know? And I guess that's where I believe it, because if like once you cross a line, like there's no turning back. Like you can't just like you end up in jail or dead or something. Like it's just like your life is not going to ever be good again. And so that's where like once you cross a line, I feel like it becomes somewhat believable for him to like just go full villain and basically destroys the town and kind of hangs on to this like, and I guess that's the title of the movie. He wants to chronicle, you know, this whole thing. He wants to like videotape everything. And so he, I guess over the course of like flying through the city, whatever, gathers a whole bunch of like cameras and phones and video cameras and security cameras and whatever, and has them floating around him, like videotaping himself doing this stuff. So that's one thing where if I'm thinking about it too much, I'm like, why is he still videotaping all this from all these different angles? Like, that seems weird, but okay, whatever. Well, like at this point, you've conceded that's what's happening in the movie. But yeah, I guess what I'm getting to is that final battle of him running around and messing things up and Matt trying to stop him, I think was really visually very effective. And they did a great job. It looked and felt really, really cool. And I think they really pulled it off. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, but like for me, that kind of like pulls the movie in and puts the bow on it in terms of the fact that it just looked great. And it was a great, really cool set piece, especially with that final kind of kill moment.
Yeah, I thought the whole fight scene itself felt more realistic than you would in a normal superhero movie, which I thought was a good detail, because even though they have superpowers, they're still regular humans and teenage boys at that. So there were times where, Andrew would be floating up, like you said, grabbing all those cameras, and then Matt came in and like tackles him. So they then fly through a building and they fall on the ground, and you can see they're like a little exhausted and they're sort of breathing and they have to recover and stand back up. And then they go at it again for a little bit, and then they whack into some other building and they fall down. And then the cops show up and there's like a breather moment. And then he throws the cops away and then flies over. So there's these like lulls of ups and downs. And that feels a little more realistic to what a human turned superhero battle would be than I feel like most of the Marvel or DC ones, where it's just fight. And just every building's exploding and it's just a constant like 30-minute nonstop. So I did like that. A little bit of detail there.
Yeah, and like to go along with what you just said, I feel like a lot of superhero movies, I find myself almost tuning out in those moments, because you have an unstoppable force, a complete god fighting another complete god, unstoppable force, and it's like, what's the point? Like, what are they even doing? I'm picturing Man of Steel, where Zod and Superman are fighting and completely obliterating the city. And while there's like some cool moments and it looks pretty good, I found myself going like, what's the point of all this? Like, they can literally, like, can they even kill each other? Like all they're doing is destroying like buildings and killing people. And like, what's the point? It just doesn't feel like there's a point, and it doesn't feel realistic, and it feels super CG, right? Which is the main kind of like criticism of modern superhero movies and Marvel movies, especially. This didn't feel that way. And I guess this is the one part where I'll say that the found footage element adds a little bit of gritty realism to it.
Sure.
So that probably helps in that final sequence to keep it from feeling... So it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? It's like, why is he shooting all this and all these cameras, and we're seeing all these different angles, and like, why? But at the same time, it does serve a little bit in that's probably the one scene where I felt like maybe it does serve a little bit of a purpose to make it feel a little bit more grounded and a little bit more realistic. So yeah, I did like that final kind of fight sequence. And I really, really like the imagery of how Andrew finally died, with that huge spear coming out of the statue and like impaling him into the ground, and he's just kind of hanging there. That visual was really, really cool, and I thought it was really effective.
That was wild. It's funny, it's funny because you could see it. They did that thing where the camera turns around and you see Matt looking at him, and you're like, "There's a big ass spear there. He's totally gonna use that. Use it, and then." So yeah, it's a good.
Moment. Andrew was controlling the cameras. He should have known. He was foreshadowing his own death by showing that spear.
Yeah, very silly.
Cool. Any final thoughts on the movie before we wrap things up?
No, I think I'm good.
Cool. Yeah. So I had a good time with it. I don't think it's the greatest movie ever made. I don't think it's one of the best superhero movies ever made. But I think it does a lot of really unique, interesting things that, especially like on this watch, because I watched it originally when it came out and really, really liked it. And I watched it at that point kind of pre all of the superhero vomit that we've gotten since. And now watching it, it felt like a bit of a breath of fresh air, and maybe even gets a little bit more juice from me because it's kind of unique and kind of takes a different path and a different kind of angle on, pun intended, angle on kind of the superhero genre. So what's your final score on this one? So we do I don't know if you noticed there, we do the out of 5 stars to kind of mirror the letterboxed rating system.
Fair enough. So I wrote a 3. That's only because I saw your rating as I wrote mine. I was like, I guess I could probably bump it up, and we'll see as we discuss things how I really feel about it, because I'm not sure. I was fluctuating between a 2.5 or 3 out of 5, because I found it overall enjoyable. I do enjoy thrillers as well. So when I saw, because before, when you had told me about the movie, I had not heard of it. I didn't know about it. So when I Googled it, it said, superhero movie thriller. And I'm like, oh, okay. I like thrillers. And the found footage part, I think, is a big part of it that really brings it down for me. But I did like the realism that came from teenage boys discovering their powers and what would happen from it. So I did like a lot of those aspects, but I think there were a lot of, as you mentioned too, with the parts outside of the 3 boys didn't feel as cohesive as the parts there. So all of those little bits together made it an okay movie. I don't know if I'd see myself reaching to watch this movie again, anytime soon, at least. I might at some point, but yeah. Anyway, that's my tangent or ramble on my rating.
Cool. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I probably objectively, if I just think of the quality of this movie, the quality of the story, the decision to make it found footage and all that, it's probably closer to a 2.5. But obviously, you're a human being and art is subjective. And when I think about the fun that I've had, in the specific moments of this movie, it elevates it a little bit for me. And I'm just again, I found myself cackling with a big smile on my face the whole time they were discovering their powers and using it like teenage boys. I thought, this is just perfect. This is so much fun. And they actually stayed in that mode a lot longer than I expected them to. And honestly, I was having so much fun, I was okay with it. A lot of times I find once you've made your point in a movie, you move on. And they had probably 1 or 2 more scenes than I would have expected of them doing that stuff. But I was sort of okay with it for just the fact that I was having fun with it. And yeah, just a couple of moments, the spider, the teeth, the fight, the battle at the end, and then that skewering, the shish kebabbing at the end. Those are all moments where I was just elevate the movie just enough and did enough unique things in the superhero genre to bring it up a little bit. So I kind of landed at a 3.5. I wanted to ask, did you see the movie Brightburn? That would have been another great pairing for this game.
No, I am not. Is that an older one as well? 2019, it looks like?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I would highly recommend you check out Brightburn. It's basically this is about Superman, for lack of a better term. It's about an alien that crash lands on a farm in a pod of some kind. And the parents are basically Superman, like the Kents.
Yeah.
And they raise this kid. But the kid ends up being a little bit hormonally unbalanced. And I think as an 11 or 12-year-old takes a turn to be a villain.
So evil Superman, basically.
Evil Superman, but as a 10 or 12-year-old.
Yeah.
And discovers what he can do and that nobody can stop him. And it's sort of a horror movie. So yeah, if that sounds interesting to you at all, I would check it out. It would have been another great pairing for this game. But yeah, if you haven't checked it out, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I put it in my notes so I can have it for later.
Very cool. Okay, well, thank you, Ryan, for doing this, and thank you for your patience and being gracious about me rescheduling and changing things for my being sick and all that. So much appreciated. Thanks for being on the podcast, and hopefully we'll have you on again if you're interested.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time. It was good to talk about a game and a movie. It was interesting. On ours, it's just the game, so it was cool to be able to do this and pair things together and sort of find those similarities between the two. So it was good.
Yeah, and for the record, you did a great job talking about the movie. I thought you made some really good points, and don't sell yourself short. You're a very eloquent speaker, for sure.
Perfect. Thank you
And like
so much.
I don't consider myself a critic of any. Like I'm a fan, and I just like to talk about movies. So
Yeah,
that's why that's what I tell people when they're like, "Oh, I don't know. Like, do I talk about movies?" I'm like, "Don't worry about it. Like, I'm no pro. It's just like a couple of dudes geeking out about stuff they like." So yeah,
sure, worked for me.
Very cool. All right, folks, if you're enjoying the podcast, please take a few minutes to rate, review, subscribe. If you're on Spotify, there's a place where you can go and click 5 stars, iTunes, all those places. It really helps the algorithm, helps people find us. You can follow us on Instagram. I put out a lot of content there, mostly board game content. So if you're interested in that, check it out. It's Dice Camera Action Pod. And if you want to provide any feedback or suggest any moving game pairings, email us at dicecameraactionpod@gmail.com. Thanks again, Ryan, for being here. Thanks everyone for listening. This was a ton of fun. We'll catch you next time.
See ya.